I am not mad. It is true that I'm no longer in a merry mood, and I have been perturbed. The tolling of the bells has taken its toll on me, and I have lost my mirth. Admittedly, due to a rare lapse in judgment, I did lose my temper. However, your inquiry into the incident that resulted in my downfall is not too intrusive as to make me angry. Listen and hear how patiently, how calmly I will tell you my tale. Perhaps you have heard of me. Does the name Jingle Jangles ring a bell? I was the court jester. I would provide entertainment to bored lords and ladies. I would juggle, jest, and do impersonations. I would skillfully juggle colored balls. It had taken much practice to learn to do it well. It was very seldom indeed that a ball in motion in the air would elude my grasp and fall to the floor to roll away like a chopped-off head. If I dropped one, it would almost always bounce back into formation. The audience was impressed with my juggling and would respond with enthusiastic applause. I would provide merriments with my jests. For example, once I stood on one side of the king, and the princess stood on the other side. I then held a candle on one side of the king's head. Next, implying that the king's head was empty, I bade the princess to look through his ears to see through to the other side. I then suggested to her to blow in his ear. When she did this, I, unobserved, blew out the candle. I had commented that the candle was made of beeswax, not earwax, and that I had been very careful not to let any candle wax drip into his ear. The spectators laughed at my merry sport, for I was a witty one who could poke fun without going so far as to lose his head. I could do impersonations of all the prominent and popular men in the kingdom known to me. I would imitate their voices and gait and really capture their personalities. I would exaggerate their eccentricities and have them say amusing things. I could even imitate the king. Although the king had a beard and mustache and I lacked facial hair, we were similar in appearance and stature. When I impersonated him, the king would almost laugh himself to death. I even made Princess Christabel laugh. Her delicate, melodious laughter was like the tinkling of the silver bells on my cap, and it rang in my ears. I gave her a crystal bell with a heart-shaped handle. She would ring it whenever she was melancholy, and I would cheer her up. Her tears turning to laughter were like raindrops sparkling in the sun. I would turn her sadness to joy with my jovial jesting. Now at this point, you may recall that I said I was not mad. I was mad, but I am mad no longer. It was Princess Christabel that made me mad. I was mad about her. She was like a star that would never fall, but my love for her would cause me to fall. I fell madly in love with her. She was as radiant as a star, and her rare beauty was beyond compare. When the stars were spread against the sky, like diamonds spread on black velvet, she would sparkle and twinkle even brighter. She could have looked down on me because I looked up to her, but she treated me with kindness and courtesy. Perhaps I was out of my mind falling in love with the princess. Maybe I lost my head or mind when I lost my heart. Eventually, I won her merry heart, but for how long? If I dropped it like one of my juggling balls, would it bounce back to me? I had decided to ask the king for his daughter's hand in marriage. I already had her heart. Why should I not also have her hand? If he declined my offer, then I would run or sail away with her. It would not matter where we went. We would be happy together. We would live happily ever after, like in a fairy tale. One day, like no other, when the sun blazed in the sky like a gold coin displayed upon a pad of cotton, I approached the royal throne. I brought the serious matter of my heart to the king's attention. What was his response? He paused, and then he laughed most heartily, while hurting my heart, which belonged to his dear daughter. He did not take my offer or me seriously. He regarded what I said as a joke. I had joked with him for so long, or so I thought at the time, that he was prepared to laugh at anything I said. Jingle jangles, that is the funniest thing you've ever said, the king said. Imagine you married to a princess. The whole court laughed. For the first time, I felt that they were laughing not with me, but at me. I looked up and saw the princess laughing at me too. I felt wounded to the heart by her derisive laughter. I regretted my folly. I was not amused, but I faintly smiled anyway as I grit and grinded my teeth in anger. My head was bowed low as I stomped away. Now, I said that the king did not take my offer seriously, but he must have given it a second thought and found offense in it. Later, as I was lingering in the shadows, I overheard him express anger toward me concerning it. How dare I ask such a thing? I was so far beneath her in position that it was insulting. In fact, he was going to announce her engagement to a prince that evening at the royal masquerade ball. He stated that he was soon going to have my head chopped off. I felt doomed. In my despair, I sank into a deep, dark depression. Later that day, as I was preparing to flee, I was summoned to the king. I thought I was being sent to the executioner, but he had something more immediate in mind. The king wanted me to suggest a unique amusement for the royal ball. I paused to ponder it, and in a moment of silence and stillness, an idea rose within my mind. I reminded him how amusing it was when I imitated him. I suggested that we switch clothes and change places to fool and amuse the guests. If he shaved, I would wear a fake beard and mustache. When we revealed the prank we pulled on the guests, hilarity would ensue. I told him to imagine the resulting fun and laughter and how the success of his special event would be ensured. The king agreed that it was a wonderful idea. That night, during the ball, we put our plan into action. The king shaved off his mustache and beard. I put on fake whiskers. We switched clothes. I put on the king's golden, bejeweled crown. We stood in front of a large mirror. He was dressed as a jester, and I was dressed as a king. The transformation was complete. I would talk like the king, and he would smile. No one would know the difference. We entered the ballroom in the castle. The king walked among the guests. He did not notice me talking to a guard. I then made my way to the throne. I sat down on it. I felt ill at ease in it. I felt nervous, wondering if the crowd would be deceived. The king in my clothes smiled at nearby guests. They smiled back, believing him to be me. This pleased the king immensely. He seemed so pleased to fool his guests. They noticed his mirth and merriment and were delighted with him. He even fooled the prince and princess and positioned himself between them. I rose slowly from the throne and commanded attention. The crowd was hushed into silence. I spoke boldly, in imitation of the king, so well as to deceive the guests. It is almost time for the ball to end. I hope that you have enjoyed yourself. The jester and I have a little surprise for you. At this point, the king expected me to tell the crowd how we switched clothes and changed places, thus revealing our joke on the crowd. He opened his mouth to speak out. A guard behind him, cued by me, bound and gagged him. Next the guard gagged and bound the masked prince and princess. All three were bound and gagged by guards who lacked knowledge of their true identities. You may have already heard that this fool dared to ask for the hand of the princess, I said. Instead of having him executed for his presumption, I mercifully spared his life. Despite it all, this fool, with the aid of 2 accomplices, has sought my life. They will pay for it with their lives. A look of amazement was on the face of the bewildered king of the jesters. The jester king attempted to speak despite being gagged. His muffled words made little impression. We hear your confession, I said. Your pathetic poor pleas for mercy do not move me. Guards, take them away. The 3 prisoners trembled with fear. The king gave me a scornful glance. Princess Christabel looked pleadingly at me, imploring mercy, but the remains of my broken heart had hardened. The king and prince struggled, but the guards held them tightly. They forced the bound and gagged king, prince, and princess out of the ballroom. The guests did not know how to react. I spoke to the guests. I hope that this display did not dampen anyone's spirits. I'm sure we can all sleep more soundly tonight, knowing that treachery has been suppressed. Again, I thank you for your good company, and I wish you all good night. I sat back down on my throne. It felt very comfortable. I was now the king, and I would play the fool no more. I had fooled them all. I was safe and secure and would live long in luxury. The guests lingered. They enjoyed each other's company so much that they tarried. They chatted with each other. I began to get a headache. I soon wished them gone. Why wouldn't they go? Suddenly, I heard a faint sound, like a ringing in my ears. Or was it in my ears? Was it the sound of wind chimes? Was it the sound of distant church wedding bells? It was like the silvery tinkling of a bell. It was like the delicate, melodious laughter of the princess. I thought that I had the last laugh. Was she still laughing at me? I heard a bell ting, a ling, and ring. Still, the remaining guests chatted pleasantly. As the sound increased, in my deep distress, I began to feel faint. The clinking and the clanging and the jingling and the jangling of the bell grew louder and louder and louder. Was it possible that they didn't hear the bell? No, they heard it ringing, and they were merely mocking me. They suspected trickery. They knew what I had done. At any moment, they would all burst out laughing derisively at me. I could no longer bear the agony and the horror of it. The executioner entered, bringing me a basket containing the severed heads. I removed the crown from my head. I took the fool's cap off the head of the king and replaced it upon the crown of my head. I tore off the fake whiskers. I reached into the basket, removing its contents. I then began to juggle the severed heads. "Fools!" I shrieked. "You may laugh or you may cry. It is I. I am Jingle Jangles, the jilted jester. Here are the heads of your prince, princess, and king."